I belong to the PLO. The PLO always advocated a message of peace, at least in the coming 2 decades, 3 decades. It has signed the Oslo Agreement. It was hopeful that out of the peace process we will get peace. But instead, out of the peace process, Israel wanted the process. It has expanded settlements. It has annexed more land. It has injected more and more settlers on Palestinian territory that was categorized by India and the international community as occupied territory. Israel was serving its geographical appetite on the expense of Palestinians. I think it is time for the international community to recognize the importance of ending the conflict.
So PLO represents the Palestinian people and Hamas not?
I would say, the international community at large knows officially who represents the Palestinian people and where. And I would say, you can still seize the moment, talk to the PLO, talk to the Palestinian people about resolving the conflict.
So you're still being ambiguous. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people.
Bombardment of Palestinians is not going to represent any hope for the future. I would say, despite the fact you are trying to get the answer regarding Hamas, I would tell you what we see in Gaza is not targeting Hamas only. It is targeting civilians. Out of the 6,000 people that have been killed, there is more than 2,000 children. There is about 1,000 and more women. Why kill them? What would that mean? If anything, it will entrench both sides. It will deepen hatred. It will encourage incitement, and it will make the formula of coexistence null and void, sadly.
I spoke to an Israeli former Prime Minister, Mr. Ehud Olmert. He feels it was Benjamin Netanyahu's one-state policy and his certain concepts that encouraged Hamas's activity and weakened the Palestinian Authority. Do you think this is the root cause of what we are facing, what we are in midst of right now?
I mean, don't look at the situation focusing on the developments that have taken shape over the last 2 weeks. You have to look at the history of conflict. 75 years where India, on many occasions, day in, day out, reminded the international community that here is a job that is unfinished, which is the realization of UN resolutions. You cannot pick and choose. UN resolutions implemented in specific parts of the world while the Palestinians have been deprived. And Abu Mazen, our president, had said it many times. There's over 1,000 decisions that were passed by the UN, whether at the General Assembly or at the Security Council. Why don't you implement even one, just one of them, to convince us that you care? So the carelessness of the international community, the stance of doing nothing, has delivered the developments that we see that have led us to today. I think, again, it is an opportunity and one should seize the moment to change the reality on the ground.
You spoke about Indian position in the past. Do you believe in a way that the Indian support for the Palestinian cause has weakened or diluted with its close friendship with Israel getting deeper?
I wouldn't say that, it's been diluted in the hearts and minds maybe of the older generation of Indians. They know the connection between Palestine and India. But I think there is a responsibility on your back and the back of media platforms to report fairly from Palestine, to say who occupied who. You cannot support the oppressor over the oppressed. You cannot support the victimizer over the victim. We are the victim. If you look at international law, if you look at UN resolutions, we are defined as the people who are under occupation. Sometimes Israel uses media to portray the non-reality, I would say, denying reality by giving the impression that we, the Palestinians, are occupying Israel. It's vice versa. And with that comes the big question. Is it the responsibility only of the Palestinians to fight for their own independence? I think it is the responsibility of all those who have amassed weapons now. Instead of amassing your weapons, why don't you put your political zeal into this and finish the Arab-Israeli conflict in a way that is acceptable, that promotes peace, that allows coexistence? And I would tell you with honesty, as a human being, I don't like to see anybody suffer. Anybody, anywhere, regardless of their religions, walk of life, or school of thought.
Do you still believe in a two-state solution? Do you think this crisis has in a way presented an opportunity to work towards that? Yeah. There are certain hopes in some sections of Israeli political spectrum.
If you look at the picture, you see pessimism everywhere. I like to be optimistic. I like to build on this to say, time has come for us collectively to come to sense, and the sense is basically aligned with the need to establish an independent Palestinian state. And here comes the most important...
Alongside Israel?
I would say alongside Israel, yes, in accordance with international law and UN resolutions and the wish and will of all partners around the world. But I would say with activities taking place, with hostilities, with genocide, with killing of innocent women and children, this creates the hard feelings which it becomes difficult for Palestinians to entertain the thought of any coexistence whatsoever, and same applies to Israelis. That's why I say seeding in hatred will not help you. And here we count on our Indian friends. Don't take sides. I don't want you to be biased. Be fair to your friends, to the old comrades of yours, to your brothers, the Palestinian people whom you have long supported and long endorsed the struggle for independence.
So do you think there is a new bias in the Indian side?
I would say, I had hoped to see more from India. I had hoped to see more activity, more engagement. And India is an extremely big country, bigger than what it imagined.
Do you see a pro-Israel
Palestinian
slant
people
in the
have a lot of
Indian
respect.
government's policy?
I think there's a lot of commercial activity that's influencing political decisions.
Between Israel and India?
I would say indeed we need to see more and more engagement from the Indian government with the Israeli government. I would like to see India use its connections to stop and cease hostilities.
What role do you expect India to play?
I would say India has a major role to play at the UN by advocating a ceasefire. India has responsibilities in different platforms and different institutions, different associations, whereby it can bring about the support of Palestinians by ending the conflict, by drawing sense in, by emphasizing the importance of a world dialogue to end the Arab-Israeli conflict and promote the message of peace. And also India can support the Palestinians in rebuilding what has been demolished in Gaza. It has done and played a major role in supporting Palestinian development in the past. Now it has to support the relief of Palestinians that have been affected by the war, existing war and before, and also support institution building in Palestine and come to being the realization of a Palestinian state.
So do you believe India is the right candidate to do all this?
India has always been close to heart, no matter what happens. And I think the Palestinian people at large will never forget the legacy of Gandhi and successors.
Yasser Arafat called Indira Gandhi his own sister.
Well, I've had the pleasure
You've been to India, right?
I've never been to India, sadly, but I would like to go. I know how Palestinians perceive India and how much respect they have for India. So if India plays a major role as an interlocutor, it means a lot to Palestinians. So let this be a message of encouragement.
Can you recollect what Yasser Arafat used to say about India, Mrs. Gandhi and so on?
I have had a lot of encounters with Chairman Arafat in which he looked at India as a sister country, as a even representative of the aspirations of the Palestinian people, and also the struggle of Indians in their statehood, in their fighting against colonization, and their independence was a message of hope which Arafat kept on praising. And we continue to praise and celebrate, and we count on you and your good people and the government of India to bring about a different reality.
What is your message to Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
I would say, you have played a major role in advocating a connection with Israel. You have deepened the relationship between India and Israel. I would like to tell you that peace for Israel means peace for the Palestinians. Advocate justice to be prevailing and work for the collective coexistence of Palestinians and Israelis.
We see tragedies in Gaza, which is unfolding every day. There are raids and attacks. But how is the situation in West Bank? How has life changed in the West Bank too after the October 7th and the war that subsequently began? Remember,
it has not been a while since Netanyahu stood before the world with the map showing, the future of the Middle East. And the map, there was no Gaza and there was no West Bank. So people who are watching the developments on the ground recognize the fact that Netanyahu is going to finish Gaza by pushing Palestinians, hopefully, or at least he's hopefully, or hopeful rather, to get Palestinians out. But hopefully we collectively will prove that with our steadfastness this will not happen, and then turn around to go to the West Bank and finish the Palestinian identity at large by evicting Palestinians to Jordan, hoping that this will bring peace. I would say, trouble in your backyard is trouble at home. Never sit tight and believe that you can forge peace through barbed wires and through walls. You have to knock the moral wall that exists in your mind and believe in the policy of live and let live. Netanyahu often asked us to negotiate without even raising any condition. Can you imagine? You negotiate your pizza while it's being eaten. This is what was happening.
There were talks of several rounds of negotiation that involved Israel and Saudi. Also some concessions to Palestine, the Palestinian Authority, and there is also a theory that the whole attack was to sabotage that deal, a trilateral deal of which a Palestinian Authority was also part of. Is that something you can confirm?
Well, let me say that discussion was underway. Things were looking at least a bit hopeful, but I would say it's all talk. There's not been any solid developments. And I would say, you refer to Olmert. Olmert advocates his message and says, the two-state solution, and that he's offered Abu Mazen, a deal that he couldn't have refused. But Correct. Abu Mazen, so to correct this narrative, Abu Mazen had asked him many times to give him a copy of the document so that he's able to resonate this back with the government, but Netanyahu refused. And it was in his dying moments, Olmert refused, and that was in his dying moments in office. So I would say anything that is not solidified, anything that's not written on paper and signed is just hopeful thinking.
What did MBS, the Saudis, advocate for you as a part of their peace deal with Israel?
We have heard their position, we have seen their stance, and we admire their determination that if the Arab-Israeli conflict not resolved, there will not be peace in the region. And remember, Saudi was the one to have come up with what developed later to become the Arab Initiative. So the Saudis know quite well that item 1 on the initiative is to give back the rights to the Palestinians and to allow justice to be served, and then go to number 2, which is normalization.
So was this part of this current discussions too?
There's no discussion whatsoever.
As per the Saudi initiative?
There's no discussion currently taking place. What is taking place is prioritizing the end to war. I know there's been talk about aid, talk about refusal of displacement of Palestinians, but our top priority is ending hostilities now.
Can you talk to us about the current situation in Gaza? I'm sure you're in good connection with people there and you follow developments there. Can you tell our viewership about the current situation in Gaza and what do you hope to be the situation in Gaza in the near future?
Situation is extremely desperate. People have no water, electricity, there's no telecom, even their phones are running out. Their capability to move is limited, bombardment everywhere. Israel is targeting civilian installations, and there's been a severance of all services, basic services, and even the Rafah crossing, when it had opened for small number of lorries to bring in aid, it was damaged, it was bombed by Israel on day 1. So every aspect of life is dying out, and Israel is hopeful by killing means of life, it can push Palestinians that have been mobilized from the city of Gaza and northern Gaza to the south. They will be basically deported to Egypt. But Egypt, luckily, is taking our position, and I hope it will be firm in its stance not to allow exodus of Palestinians into Egypt and not allow the second Nakba to happen whereby Palestinians are displaced. It's bad enough that Israel has mobilized half of the population of Gaza into southern Gaza.
There is a section of Israelis who hope that Hamas will be defeated at the end of this conflict, and they hope Palestinian Authority to take over in Gaza too. Is that your hope too?
I would say, Hamas has been part of the Palestinian political divide, as it were. But
do you think they are a legitimate player in this?
No, they're not a member of the PLO, as you know. Yes. And Fatah has many times had negative encounters with Hamas. But I think it is not the time now to open old wounds. It's time to save the lives of our people. and we have to advocate this push for the cessation of hostilities. I would say also that the PLO has invited many parties beyond Hamas to join the PLO so that we all resonate the same message. And I remain hopeful that this push from the international community will resurface the importance and revitalize the work for the establishment of peace in the future. Mind you, the eradication of a specific party by means of force sometimes has or most of the times has proven to have made the party stronger. So if this was a military operation to eradicate a Palestinian group, be assured that the way the bombardment, the attacks, the savagery with which Israel is showing might is not going to be the solution for the future.
Your leadership has been having multiple encounters with the United States presidents and the Secretary of State and other leaders. What is the US telling you? What is their promise to you?
I think, the biggest promise that was broken, that the Biden administration will be serious about the peace process, will be serious about the recognition of self-determination and rights to Palestinians. And we have not been the ones. It was an American initiative by Biden to promise the leadership that it won't be a reflection of the Trump administration. But so far he has followed on one Trump aspect, which is the so-called Abrahamic Accords and normalization with Israel. Given emphasis to that and not given emphasis to the recognition of Palestinian rights, to the establishment of a Palestinian state, of cessation of hostilities, of the refusal to recognize Israel's unilateral acts in the West Bank and confiscation of property and land, and more introduction of settlers onto our own territories, has led to the biggest failure in history.
So you're disappointed about Biden administration's policies?
Extremely disappointed. I think, one of the reasons as to why we stand here, because America did not do the job it had promised to do, and has not allowed the two-state solution to prevail. Day in and day out, President Abbas asked Biden, if you believe in two states, your narrative is about two states, why not go to the UN and recognize Palestine as a full-fledged member state? Discussion dies there, and we start, getting the diplomatic answers. It's no time for diplomacy now. There is time for action.
In this round of conflict, he has had multiple calls with your leadership, Abu Mazen and several others. What are they saying in this round of conflict? What are they insisting you? What are they telling you about this current situation?
Priority is for the cessation of hostilities. We see an ongoing massacre taking shape. We have to stop hostilities. Israel has to cease fire, and then we open all files and discuss all issues. So far, Israel is adamant.
What is the US telling you that they're doing?
The US is saying that, it wants to see Israel abide by international law, even in their combat. They say they want to open human corridors to allow human aid to flow into Gaza. This is good, but the best approach to matter is to ask Israel to cease hostilities, come back to the table, and revitalize a political track.
What about the hostages?
I would say that's an issue that needs to be settled and needs to be discussed. And I would say, under the continuation of bombardment, that is complicated, very complicated.
What would you like to tell our viewers at this end of this interview?
I would say, India is India, close to heart, close to mind, and India can play a bigger role than it's playing, and its government has to come and believe in the message of peace as the way forward, and can believe in itself in trying to be an advocate for a revitalization of a political track that leads to the realization and recognition of Palestinians' dreams and aspirations.
Thank you very much, sir. Let's hope that peace prevails in this region. Thank you very much. பாலஸ்தீனிய நிர்வாகத்துடைய முக்கிய தலைவர் நமக்கு அளித்த பேட்டியை கேட்டோம். இருநாட்டு தீர்வை அவர் வலியுறுத்துகிறார். ஒரு பாலஸ்தீனிய தேசம் உருவாவதுதான் சரி. இந்தியா கிட்ட எங்கள்கிட்ட இன்னும் எதிர்பார்ப்பு இருக்கு. அமெரிக்க நிலைப்பாடு ஏமாற்றம் அளிக்கிறது அப்படிங்கிறது அவருடைய பேட்டியுடைய முக்கியமான சாராம்சமாக இருக்கிறது. ஒளிப்பதிவாளர் லூக்கஸுடன் பாலஸ்தீனிய தலைநகரம் ராமல்லாவிலிருந்து ஹரிஹரன்.
Thank you.
Still going.
Okay.
It's going now. It's going live.
All right. I see. انت ابو ميزه حبيبي تفضل. It's live now. Sure.
It is being dubbed also.
Oh, I see.
Live.
Simultaneously.
Hello. How are you? Fine, sir.
That needs to be settled, that needs to be discussed, and I would say, under the continuation of bombardment, that is completely irrelevant.
What would you like to tell our viewers at the end of this interview?
I would say, India is India, close to heart, close to mind, and India can play a bigger role than it's playing, and its government has to come and believe in
இந்தியா பாலஸ்தீனியர்களுக்கு மிகவும் நெருக்கமான ஒரு நாடாக இருந்திருக்கிறது. அது இங்கே அமைதியை நிலைநாட்டுவதற்கு தேவையான நடவடிக்கை எடுக்கக்கூடிய நிலையிலே இருக்கிறது.
Thank you very much, sir.
كل عام مباشر. كل عام مباشر.
பலஸ்தீனுடைய முக்கிய தலைவர் நமக்கு அளித்த பேட்டியை கேட்டோம். இருநாட்டு தீர்வு அவர் வலியுறுத்துகிறார். ஒரு பாலஸ்தீனிய தேசம் உருவாவதுதான் சரி. இந்திய கிட்ட எங்கள்கிட்ட இன்னும் எதிர்பார்த்திருக்கு. அமெரிக்க நிலைப்பாடு ஏமாற்ற